Hello, Petlon. How you doing? How are things going? Apologies we didn't have a chapter yesterday. I went to the dentist. What do you think about the dentist? Are you for going to the dentist or do you not like going to the dentist? I think for me, it's not a case of like or dislike. It's a case of I go because I know it's important. Does it hurt at times? Yes. One thing I did find out, excuse me. Sorry, you get a sneeze there just for free. See, there you know, it's not the e thing. It's real. So sorry, but I might as well just keep recording because it's the reality of the situation. So my thing about the dentist is, dental health is heart health. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned. And I spoke to the dentist yesterday as well about the theories of, and she made a really good point, and that is, she said, pain is inevitable because we have to find out how deep it goes. Sounds wrong. how deep the if any decay goes, or how deep any gum recession goes, or if there's any pockets in there. She goes, so if we see any reaction from you, because I don't usually react, pain is normality and that sort of thing. But she said, if we see like pain from you, we know to be careful of it, and we also know how far we need to sort of like swish it out or drill down and that sort of thing, which I thought was absolutely fascinating, because like the general thing about people would think, which is true, going to the dentist is pain, rah, 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 which is true, which is absolutely true. At times it does hurt, but a lot of the time it's just, let's have a little check around, let's have a little clean, let's have a little swish, swish. It's but I'm also very, very lucky in that not only do we have the NHS here in the UK, but my dentists are really nice. The dentist is, the hygienist is, they're just lovely, lovely people. And, at the end of the day, they've got a job to do. And as a patient, I've got a job to do to a degree. But they're always very mindful and always like, kind of, if at any point it hurts, you let me know, sort of thing. So I generally kind of, wince a little bit, apparently. Sorry, I'm sure you really wanted to know about my visit to the dentist. That's life and all that jazz. Anyway, how are you? I've seen some good news around on the comments, which is awesome. And, I'm still saying like lots of love and strength to the watcher and his lovely wife who's powering on. She's doing really great. But by all means, have a little chat in the comments with each other, let each other know how you're doing. And as I said, if you ever want to drop me a line, feel free. It's okay. It's no problem. Let me know how things are. If you're a bit shy of putting things in the comments, that's okay. Right then, this is a 3-minute Inkalogue. Oh my goodness gracious me. I will say, please hit the like button if you enjoy this. If you can listen to the end, that is absolutely awesome, because it always helps the success of the channel. If you're not digging it, by all means, there's lots of other stuff to look at, and I'm just grateful that you're here, especially our little community who are the bestest peoples in the whole world ever. So I better stop waffling on and get you chapter 14 of Paint Your Dragon by our beloved Mr. Thomas of Holt. It's not on the map, Slitgrind protested. The van stood on the high shoulder of the M6. In the front, Prodsnap and Slitgrind were poring over the vintage road atlas they'd found in the glove compartment. Here it is, look, said Prodsnap, pointing. No, you fool, that's Hull. Maybe that's just lousy spelling. Slitgrind closed the atlas with a snap. Stands to reason, he said. They don't put it on mortal maps, because otherwise we'd have hundreds of bloody tourists blocking up the front drive all the time. It occurred to Prodsnap that maybe his colleague was being a trifle alarmist, but he didn't say anything. It was true, Hell wasn't on the map. Actually, I would say it was on the map if you've ever been on Spaghetti Junction in Birmingham, or even if you've been down to Teesside and you've had to go on the sort of like the kind of like uppy down bypass thing, which is, I get it wrong every time. I digress. Anywho, I've lost my place. Let's try that again. It was true. Hell was not on the map. He tried hard to remember the route the coach driver had taken, but it had been all homogeneous motorway with no landmarks whatsoever. We'll have to ask someone then, he said. Slitgrin scowled. "Don't be thick," he replied. "Someone who knows, obviously," Prodsnap said. "Shouldn't be too hard." But Slitgrin was about to protest, but the penny dropped. "Do we have to?" he objected. "Those people always give me the willies." "Me too." Prodsnap suited the action to the word. "But they'll know the way, and we don't. Looks like we don't have much choice." His colleague grimaced, acknowledging the logic. "Well," he sighed, "suppose they're on our side, in a way." "Better the colleague you know." Slitgrin shrugged and turned the ignition key. "Give me the deep blue sea any time," he muttered, and indicated right. "I conjure you by Asmodee and Beelzebub, Seetre and Satan, Eloi, Elohim and Miss Frobisher, do please be careful, you nearly made me spill the black host." Barbed whips of wind flicked cruelly through the slighted walls of the ruins of the Castle Rush. The moon had long since hidden her face behind the clouds, and the only light was the livid orange glow from the foul-smelling fire. In the shattered keep of the castle, 5 white-clad figures, hooded and barefoot, huddled inside the arbitrary confines of a chalked ring. Around them lay the horrible impedimenta of the Black Rite, pentangles, tetragrammaton, a sword, a mutilated Bible, a goat skull, a frozen chicken, slowly defrosting, "Are you not going to be much longer?" demanded a querulous voice from outside the ring of firelight. "It's freezing." The great goat sighed petulantly. "These things can't be rushed, Miss, "Filkins," hissed the lesser goat. "Sonia Filkins. She's Mrs. Brownlow's niece from the post office." "Can't I at least have a blanket or something?" whined Miss Filkins. "I'm getting all goose pimply, and it's damp. Auntie Edie didn't say anything about sitting in the damp." The lesser goat simpered slightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but Brenda's babysitting up at the vicarage, and now Yvonne started college." I know," sighed the great goat. "Maybe next time, Miss Frobisher. I can't really see any point in continuing under these conditions." A mournful silence. The lesser goat started to pack away the horrible impedimenta. "If you finish with the chickens," said Miss Filkins, "do you mind if I take it on with me? There's a really nice recipe in my magazine for chicken." "Please," grunted the great goat, carefully snuggling the skull in cotton wool. "Help yourself. Such a pity to let good food go to—" He fell silent. Although he was right next to the fire, his legs were suddenly icy cold. He didn't look round. "Miss Frobisher?" he croaked. "Yes, Dr. Thwaites?" "Perhaps Miss, Filkins needn't put her clothes back on quite yet." The lesser goat looked at him, but I thought, there. He jerked his head in the direction of the shattered tower. By Asmodee and Beelzebub, Sidray and—" "Excuse me." Miss Frobisher let out a little scream. The thurifer hastily stubbed out his cigarette. The sword-bearer, who was half in and half out of his vestments, made a grab for his trousers. Old Mr. Blakiston, the black verger, dozed peacefully on. "Excuse me," repeated Prodsnap. He was carrying an electric torch and wearing an old barber jacket he'd found on the scarecrow, for the night was quite cold, but the firelight dazzled vividly on his hoofs and horns. "We haven't missed it, have we? Only we got a bit held up. Roadworks on the A34 just south of Chipping Norton." "Please, can I put my clothes on now, Miss Frobisher? I'm going blue." The great goat winced. "Please be quiet, Miss Wilkins," he snapped. Would you, care to join us? Quick, Miss Frobisher, the chicken." "You said I could have it." Prodsnap shivered, despite his barber. "Please," he said, "don't go to any trouble on our account. We had something at a little chef on the way. We really—" only wanted to ask. Bloody hell, squeezed the thurifer. He's bleeding devil. The great goat closed his eyes, mortified. First thing in the morning, there'd be a vacancy for the post of Black Thurifer, and never mind the fact that Barney Philpott was the only 24-hour plumber in the district. "Thurifer," he commanded, "be quiet. By Asmodee and—" Slitgrin nudged his colleague in the small of the back. "For Christ's sake, Prozza," he hissed, "let's get out of here. I'm scared. Oh, that was my shin, you clumsy—" "We were wondering," Prodsnap went on, raising his voice slightly, "if you could help us out. You see, we're lost, and—" "Lost?" The great goat peered at him through thick-lensed bifocals. "You mean you fell with Lucifer, son of the morning, wantonly preferring the path of damnation to the—" "Miss the bus," said Slitgrin. "Got left behind. I think they did it on purpose," he said resentfully. "Someone's going to cop it when I get home." The great goat's mouth was hanging open like a broken gate. "Bus," he repeated. "An outing," said Prodsnap, "to Nashville. Now we're having to make our own way home, and it's not actually shown on the map. So we were wondering if—" "Hey," the great goat felt a tug on his sleeve. "These two," the sword-bearer was muttering. "They're for real." "Of course they are, you foolish man," hissed the great goat. "Look at the horns, the tails." The sword-bearer shrugged. "Right," he said. "Not what I expected, though." "Not what you Bit of a disappointment, really." "How dare you? These are—" He hesitated. Unshakable his faith might be, but there was something about the way that one devil was trying to hide behind the other that did tend to sap that forbidden glamour. "Do excuse me asking," he said apologetically, "but do you gentlemen have any form of identification? Only you see—" "It's that great Horwood lot," muttered the sword-bearer, dressed up in a lot of fancy dress. "Here, is that you, Jim Partridge? Because if it is, you can forget having your car back by the weekend." Prodsnap blushed green. "Sorry, we don't actually have cards or anything. Usually," he added, with his remaining shreds of dignity, "we don't feel the need—" "Prozza, shut up," Slitgrin. "I'd have thought—" Prodsnap soldiered on. "The horns and the hooves and all that, they do rather speak for themselves." "Cardboard and spirit gum," sneered the sword-bearer. "Do us a favour, Jim. You've had your joke. Now bugger off." "Prozza," Slitgrin hissed. Prodsnap noticed he was grimly averting his eyes from something. "There's a bin over there with no bloody clothes on." Moments like these, Prodsnap reflected, made you realise that the Chardonnays of this world do have their uses. Chardonnay, of course, was nice and snug in the van, tied up and gagged. Likewise, the demon Snorkfrod. Now, she'd know how to handle a situation like this. Oh, no trouble at all. "Quiet," he snapped, then turned to the great goat, who was peering disconcertingly at him over the rims of his glasses. He racked his brains. Something convincing. A display of black magic, perhaps. An anti-miracle. The trouble was, he didn't actually know any. Not much call for black magic when you're a clerk in the wages office. Narrator's note, do you say clerk or clerk? I always say clerk. I think it's clerk in America. I'm not sure, but let me know in the comments. Is it clerk or clerk? I digress. The nasty, suspicious one was leering at him. He decided to improvise. "Maybe this will convince you," he said, and threw something in the fire. There was a whoosh of flame and a very loud bang. The sword-bearer leapt out of his skin. Old Mr. Blakiston woke up, mumbled something about coffee, and went back to sleep again. Oh, it had worked. "What the shop floor was that?" hissed Slitgrin. "Cigarette lighter," Prodsnap hissed back. "My, good man," he went on, trying to look demonic. "If you could just, I command you to give us directions. Now," he added, and snarled. He inhaled a whiff of black incense and sneezed. The great goat bowed humbly, felt in his inside pocket, and produced an envelope and a biro.
Now, if you go back the way you came as far as the bunch of grapes...
Eventually, George stopped running. Only when he was absolutely convinced nobody was following him, of course. One long life and one short, so far, but highly eventful one, had taught him the value of running away as a solution to virtually all your problems. The way he saw it, if you can run, why bother to hide anyway? Absolutely no idea where he was. A road sign said Hockley Street, but even if it was telling George the truth, he had, on a number of occasions, prolonged his life by not taking the local authorities' words for it. Sure, that Dragon's Head, ain't that so, Mr. Mayor? And, yup, we fixed that bridge last October, were notable examples. It didn't actually get him very far. Chances were Hockley Street was every bit as lost as he was. But it did contain a pub, and all that running had given George a thirst you could rub down paintwork with. With a sigh of satisfaction that could have convinced you he'd just created the world ahead of schedule and under budget, he leaned on the door of the public bar and floored in. Marvellous thing, the human brain. In its vast, multi-megabyte subconscious memory, it stores everything. Everything. Seen, heard, glimpsed, semi-noticed, unconsciously observed. If the librarians of the brain could get stuff up from the stacks just a little bit quicker, we'd all be supermen, and the planet would probably have been a radioactive shell back in 1906. The Dun Cow, Hockley Street. Been there before. Recently. As he walked in, Bianca was just explaining to the police officer, not the one who was still curled up in a ball, moaning softly, a different one, that the man who she'd tried to maim with a stool was guilty of art theft, causing explosions, attempted murder, and innumerable counts of genocide. She'd never seen the priest before in her life. She could think of no reason why he should want to clobber two of her friends with beer bottles, and she was really sorry about his teeth. Honest to God, just an accident. Probably the tooth fairy was on the phone right now to leading merchant bankers trying to raise some sort of venture capital to finance such a major shipment. Been there, wrecked that, got the summons. George turned, smoothly and swiftly, but not swiftly enough. A hand settled on his shoulder like a speeded-up glacier. Someone inquired of him where he thought he was going, then sidestepped his vicious elbow jab, kicked his knees from underneath him, and clocked him one with a low-and-brow ashtray. Narrator's note, if you remember the pubs back in the heyday of pubs, before they were absolutely decimated by certain bans in the UK, but, you know, eyes, oars, whatever floats your boat. I digress. Them low-and-brow ashtrays were not to be messed with. They were the size of flipping bricks. Anywho, it's him, Bianca shrieked, pointing. Let go my arm. I want to kill him. So, apparently, did the witnesses Mike and Peter, and George, who'd majored in cheating at the University of Life, saw a teeny-tiny sliver of a chance. They rushed at him, heavy policemen dragging along behind them like slipped anchors. He accordingly dived towards them, taking the direction his captor least expected. Grabbing hands missed him on all sides. He vaulted onto a table, from the table to the bar top, skidded along the bar like a glass of whiskey in a western, braked sharply, kicked the barmaid neatly in the eye as she lunged for his ankles, hopped down and legged it through the kitchens. As it says in the director's cut of the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are those that fight dirty, for they shall be one jump ahead. Stop him! The cook, assuming that the fast-moving character who just burst into his kitchen was a fugitive from payment, upended a tray of chili over his head, causing him to misnavigate and cannon back into the dustbin. It was then just a matter of scooping up his feet, tucking them in after the rest of them, putting on the lid and sitting on it. Job done. If cooks were generals, wars would last hours, not years.
He's an ear, the cook shouted, and he owes for 12 portions of chili.
Inside a dustbin, nose full of potato peelings and the nasty things people leave on their plates after they're finished eating, even someone as resourceful as George has to take an enforced rest. If he's wise, he'll put the time to good use, analysing his position, evaluating the merits of alternative strategies, trying at all costs not to breathe in. They emptied the bin on the floor. The cook joined the arrest roster, obstructing the police, assault with the wet colander, and fished George out. A policeman knelt down, handcuffs at the ready. "Hey, Sarge!" he screamed. "This bloke's on fire!" If you're not used to them, halos can look remarkably like burning petrol, worn externally. There was yelling, milling about, wrenching of fire extinguishers off walls, some force set off the fire alarm, adding deafening noise to the feast of sensory input. George wriggled and struck out. In close combat, a discarded ferry bottle covered in pan scrapings can be as effective as an Ingram's gun. "Rap the bastard!" somebody yelled, but you might as well have shouted "fix the economy" to a gaggle of politicians. All that happened was that the barmaid got knocked into the sink and one policeman scored a direct hit on another policeman with the first exuberant jet from the fire extinguisher. After that, it was sheer Brownian motion, Goebbels style. Emerging from the scrum, George scrabbled across the floor, hauled himself up by the dishwasher, and headed for the door. Like Napoleon at Waterloo, it was sound strategy undermined by treacherous conditions. He stood on a second-hand fried egg, skated 3 yards and collided with Bianca, pushing her into the remains of the Black Forest Gâteau. As he looked about him, George saw he was surrounded. The saying, "never say die," didn't mean that much to George. He frequently said, "Die," or more usually, "Die, you bastard," generally when standing over a fallen opponent. The principle behind it, however, was a dominant influence on his life. Without looking down, he trawled the worktop, snatched up the first thing that came to hand, levelled it at his attackers, and snapped, "Freeze!" 3/4 of a second later, they realised he was threatening them with a cheese grater. Narrator's note, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't mess with a cheese grater, especially their mandolins. They're lethal. I'm not allowed to have one in the house, but anyway. I digress. Cheese grater, but 3/4 of a second was all he needed. There was a window, and he jumped. Glass was still landing all around him when he opened his eyes. Scrambling to his feet, he launched himself forwards, aware that the window frame was full of swearing policemen cutting their fingers. He had the feeling that if they caught up with him, there would be major sacrilege committed. He ran. The backyard wall of the pub was low enough to swarm over if you weren't fussy about trifles such as broken glass. George dropped down the other side, turned over his ankle, sprawled headlong, and banged his head against the car door in the act of opening. "Get in!" George lifted his head. "Sorry, I said get in." He looked up to see a black Mercedes, back door ajar, on the rear seat a wry grin with a human being attached to its back. Close at hand, angry policemen had discovered the yard gate was locked. "Who are you?" George asked. "My name's Stevenson," the grin replied. "And you're George. Pull your finger out, old son." But Chubby Stevenson reached inside his jacket, produced a .45 Colt, like it says in the book Blessed Are the Peacemakers, and pointed it at George's head. "Chop, chop," he said. "There's a good lad." George realised that it would be discourteous to refuse, and got in.
"Have they gone?"
"Yes, Dr. Thwaites."
"Good."
Wearily, the great goat picked up the black chalice, shook out the last dregs of cold tea, and put it back in its straw-filled shoebox. Nobody had said anything, but they all knew that the handsome silver goblet was about to resume its career as the Swerford Golf Club President's Cup. Having your nightmare come true is the final disillusionment. "Dr. Thwaites." "About next Thursday." Miss Frobisher's voice was heavy with the embarrassment of betrayal, the same tone of voice Judas Iscariot used when telling the chief priest he'd rather have cash if it was all the same to him. I've just remembered it's the Red Cross Swiss drive, so I won't be able to make it after all. I do hope—"
"Not at all, Miss Frobisher. Not at all."
The great goat sighed.
"As it happens, I think I'm busy that day too. What about you, Barney?"
The thoroughfare was about to explain that coincidentally he'd probably be working late next Thursday when all 5 of them became aware of a rich darkness as some great shape interposed itself between them and the fleeting moon.
"Go away," snapped the great goat. "Can't you see we're closed?"
They ducked. As a non-verbal response goes, a fiery tsunami unleashed about 3 feet over one's head is remarkably eloquent.
"Won't keep you a tick," said
said the dragon. About good and evil. Kurt twitched impatiently. Moral philosophy had never interested him much, having as much relevance to his profession as a pipe cleaner to the Mersey Tunnel. If he'd wanted to lecture on ethics, however, his first choice would not have been a word processor.
"Hey," he said, "save it for the customers. Well, I delivered the goods. Just pay me and I'll split." "You also have a dragon to kill, don't forget."
Kurt made an exaggerated show of looking around.
"Nope," he said at last. "Don't see any dragon in here, unless he's hiding from the droke, disguised as a pencil. Look, pal, you do your job and I'll do mine, okay?" "No, look at me. This is relevant." With a sigh, Kurt perched on the edge of the desk and folded his arms. "Shoot," he said.
"With pleasure. Good and evil, then. Define good for me."
"Huh?"
Kurt thought for a minute.
"Good what?"
"Not good anything. Just good." Kurt's eyebrows lifted, Spock-like.
"I don't know," he said. "It all depends on where you're at, I guess. Like," he went on, "it's a good shot if you fire it and hit me, but from where I'm standing, there ain't much that's good about it."
The screen filled with glowing green ticks. "Very good, Mr. Lundqvist. You're way ahead of me. Nevertheless, I will explain further."
"Why?"
"Indulge me. Good and evil are, of course, two sides of the same coin. What's good for me is bad for you. One man's mead is another man's purge. The current of morality is more often alternating than direct. That, I imagine, is scarcely news as far as you are concerned. Am I right?"
"More right than Franco, Buster. What's this got to do with—"
"Please don't interrupt. You've been hired to kill a dragon. Dragons are evil, yes?"
"I guess so."
"Saints, on the other hand, are good. Agreed?"
"Well, yeah."
"Wrong. It all depends on the individual concerned. And even then, it's still very much a question of subjective interpretation. Take St. George, for example."
"Huh?"
"St. George, noted dragon slayer. Come on, you must have heard of him. A legend in your profession, surely?" Kurt nodded.
"In his day," he replied absently. "A lot of blood flowed under the bridge since then."
"Nevertheless, a killer, Kurt. Someone who destroyed other intelligent life forms for money.
"A professional."
A saint. And not just any old saint, but the patron saint of peaceful, law-abiding, animal-loving Albion. You know who that is and why that is?"
"Never gave it any thought,"
Kurt replied honestly. 3,000 a year patronage allowance. That's why. And because no other saint of adequate seniority was prepared to be associated with a cluster of wet, foggy islands on the very northwestern edge of the known world. Nobody could believe it when he volunteered. It was like asking to be made Secretary of State for Northern Ireland." Kurt shrugged.
"So?"
"So, with George as its patron, this poxy little cluster of islands built an empire, the biggest ever. Top nation for a time. This poxy little cluster, bigger than France or Italy or Germany, owned half of Africa, half of Asia. Remember Rashinkor, Kurt? God for Harry, England and St. George.
"I missed that game. I was working. Saw the highlights, but
Not bad for the last place God made, under the patronage of a hired killer. And God was an Englishman in those days. Results count for something, wouldn't you say?"
"Do me a favour," Kurt protested. "All that time, the sucker was dead."
"Doesn't matter. When you're a saint, it's not what you do that really matters. It's what you are. George was a dragon slayer. He won the big fight. He inspired generations of Englishmen to go out and beat the crap out of all foreigners. Name me a European country England hasn't beaten in a war. France, twice. Germany, twice. Italy,
Greece, Kurt interrupted. Switzerland, Monaco. He fell silent. Okay, point taken, he continued. But so what? Doesn't prove anything. Wrong. The good guys are always the winners, are they not? I mean, the president doesn't get up on the rostrum at the victory parade and say to all the world, okay, we admit it, we were in the wrong, but fuck it, we won anyway. Who's good and who is evil is decided by trial, by combat. It is the only way. Or can you admit the possibility of a scenario where the good guys are all stomped on and the baddies are singing, here we go, here we go, here we go. When the final credits are actually rolling, you can't, not without your brain getting squeezed out of your ears. Get to the point, Kurt grunted awkwardly. Simple. England prevailed because she was in the right, because George killed the dragon. How or why he did it doesn't matter, a cold chip agreed. If I agree, will you pay me the money you owe me? But all that's changed now. England's finished. She's a suburb of Europe, the USA's poor relation. Got about 25% of the international stature of the Philippines. You could saw Europe off at Calais and it would be a month before anybody noticed. So, what happened? I have this dreary feeling you're going to tell me. The result must have been wrong, Kurt. There's got to have been a foul-up. The wrong guy must have killed the dragon, and that's why there has to be a rematch. Kurt shrugged. Okay, he said. If I was the kind of weirdo who went on with that kind of crap, maybe I'd buy that too. But you want me to kill this goddamn dragon, so after the fight, Kurt, after the fight, the dragon wastes George, you waste the dragon, the United States conclusively defeats the personification of evil, and under the patronage of Saint Kurt proceeds to manifest its destiny. Everybody lives happily ever after. The screen filled with little wavy lines, cybernetic laughter. That's why I've just arranged for George to be rescued. Can't very well go fighting dragons if he's doing 3 years for assault and battery. Kurt thought it over for a while. Once I've killed the dragon, he asked, do I get paid? Of course. Kurt nodded. Okay, he said, that's my definition of a happy ending. Ha ha. Heard all that? Chubby nodded into his laptop and smiled. You bet, he said. I thought you handled that adequately. He'll do what he is told. After all, what else are people for? Indeed. Talking of which... Chubby sighed. Whenever that blasted box of tricks went all parenthetical on him and started ending sentences with 3 dots, he knew he was in for something more than usually shitty. After he's dealt with the dragon, kill him. Dun dun dun! Oh my goodness gracious, it's all getting a bit Pete Tong. Oh, do you remember back in the day when that used to actually be a thing? It's all gone a bit wrong. It's a bit Pete Tong. Oops, my genx is showing. Need to tuck that back in. What did you think about the chapter? Are you enjoying it? How's it going? I think we're on chapter 15 next. I think it's 20 in this book, or is it 17? I can't remember. It's 20. So we've got 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We've got 6 more chapters of this one. And then we're going to do Here Comes the Sun. And I am so excited about that. I can't even tell you. I love Painted Dragon. There's another one, Barking at the Moon, I think it's called. Barking at the Wrong Tree. That'll be the one I'll do in New Year. That'll definitely be the one I do in New Year. I'm looking forward to that. We were chatting this morning on about the Coraline theme, and I was listening to it going, yeah, I would need to injure myself to squeak that high. It's always worth a try, and I'm learning SpongeBob. My goodness me, that's manic. That's pure chaos, that tune. It's just, I was just like, okay, we'll give this one a go then. But yeah, there's so many good tunes that I've been suggesting. I had them all written down, and can I eckers find where I've written them down?
But it is how it is. So we will find them. We will get back to doing it when everything lifts. And if you like good cozy mystery series, my Camille Devine Murder Mysteries, I've just released the Westminster Murders, which is a fantastic story by Andrea Hicks. They are all on Audible, but if you would like a listen, and if you do want to give a rating or a review, it's really up to you. Please email me and I can give you a promo code for a free listen to any of my actual grown-up promotional, professional audiobooks that are on Audible. Yes. And I'm very excited because I've got one coming out probably just after Halloween now, but it's called The Endurance of the Dollmaker, and it's by K.S. Smith, and she does incredible comedies, but this one is one of her thrillers, and she's one of those very rare authors that can write thrillers as well as they can write comedies. And it's a fantastic story about a couple that goes away to a sort of remote island in Scotland where they've got a sort of like ancestral home, this ancestral house, and they've unfortunately lost their child in a car accident. And the doll maker is the wife, she makes dolls, and the husband is an author. And of course they're trying to rebuild their marriage, as it were. But there's a long history on the island about, there's the witch's house, and then there's a house that they're in, and the whispers in that house. It is a fantastic story. I can't even tell you enough, but I'm looking forward to telling you when that one comes out. So cozy mysteries are the Camille Devine ones. So as I said, if you want to have a listen to cozy mystery, but I've also done ones about Viking fantasies. I've done fantasy novels, comedies. There's a whole range of them. But if you would like to have a little look, see if you do use Audible. If you do, give me a shout. If you do want to kind of have a little listen, see how I do in there, and if you want to rate it, you can always get a promo code for a free listen, no problems. But it's really up to you. So I had to have an unabashed and unashamed plug there because I don't do it usually, but I'd like to kind of just get them out there a little bit more because, I like them. Anyway, my lovely, lovely beans, I appreciate you all very, very, very much. I really do, because if it's not for you being here, I wouldn't be doing it. If it's not for you turning up every time, we're not able to share the audiobooks with a wider audience. And there's a lot of parents who like the children's books that I read, and they play them to their children, as kind of storytelling, which is very precious. And also there's people that are not able to take the time out to read physical books. They enjoy them. And it's just nice to be able to share something that I'm passionate about and enjoy with people who also enjoy the wonder of storytelling. It's just, yay. I don't know why I'm thinking like this today. I'm kind of I think it's going towards the end of the year. So you know how it is. You reflect on the year and how amazing it's been. And you guys have been a big part of that. And I'm very, very grateful. Anyway, I'm going to stop being all soppy and stuff now. People might think I've got a flipping heart. Don't tell secrets. Don't tell anybody. Okay. Shh. But hopefully I'll be back in a couple of days. So it's Friday today, so it'll be Sunday. If not Sunday, it'll be Monday. And I'll be back with chapter 15. And we'll be cracking on with this absolutely incredible story. But most importantly of all, you stay safe. If you're too hot, get hydrated. If you're too cold, keep warm. Watch out. Got all those winter bugs bimbling about. Especially there's new strains of the vid as well. So anyway, on a positive note, take it easy. Get lots of good rest. Have a nice relaxing couple of days. And I'll see you soon.